And welcome to another episode of How to Become a Robust Human Being in the Modern World. Today I'm going to share with you how intermittent fasting or time restricted feeding can be beneficial to you. I'm going to share with you some protocols that I've been using, some benefits that I've researched that may just be beneficial to you. Let's get into them. Let's look at what intermittent fasting is. It is a nutrition intervention approach in which daily calorie intake is set at a certain window. Usually it's between 8 to 10 hours of feeding. The other 16 hours or 14, you are not intaking any meals or calorie dense food. So let's say, for example, I start my first meal at 10 and I finish my last meal at 6. This just means that after 6 I will consume nothing that is calorie dense. I will be looking at things like tea, coffee, water, things that do not have calories in them. I usually try not to have any liquids post before I go to bed. This is just to avoid going to the toilet the whole time. So I would usually have my meal, I will usually have my first cup of coffee upon waking up. Of late, I've been trying to at least have my first cup of coffee an hour or 90 minutes upon waking up. But I still have water. So try to have your liquids, especially liquids that do not have any calories in them, upon waking up. And try not to have any 2 to 3 hours before going to bed, just to avoid waking up during the night and going to bed. This may just interrupt your sleep, so you want to try and avoid that. The time I break my fast, I usually have some nuts, because usually, depending on how my day is planned out with clients, my first meal will be at 10. So I will just have some nuts and I'll immediately hit a training session and I'll be fine. Sometimes, depending on the clients that I have during the day, I can train without eating anything. No pre-workout, dollar, nothing. I don't even take pre-workout and I do just fine. You will do just fine. You'll do just fine. But like I always say, people are different. These things affect us differently. So with me, I can train fasted, but should I want to eat something before I train, I'll take some nuts just to break the fast. Because it turns out it's very important to eat at the same time and end your last meal at the same time. But we'll get into that later on. Now, a lot of things are happening when you are fasting and when you are eating. Depending on the kinds of foods that you are intaking, this may have an impact on your insulin. It is important to make sure that you eat the correct foods to keep your insulin levels low. Now, protein does not have a huge impact on insulin. Fats have a medium impact on insulin, medium to low. And carbohydrates have a larger impact on our insulin levels. So it is important to make sure that you choose the correct foods to intake when you do choose to eat. The goal is to try and keep the insulin level low and not too high. So try to consume complex carbohydrates and not the simple ones, like pasta, things that have fructose in them, the cold drink, things like that. So basically, we can say that processed foods, you should stay away from them and eat more foods that are in their most natural form, like I said on the other video, with the 8 principles of nutrition. So try to stay away from foods that will spike your insulin level, and those are processed foods. By now, with the information that I've given, you are aware of these kinds of foods that you must stay away from. We as human beings have a clock, an internal clock in our bodies that is followed by a circadian rhythm. Now, the circadian rhythm is defined as the physical, mental, and behavioral changes that follow a 24-hour cycle. These natural processes respond to light when the sun rises and dark when the sun sets. Basically, everything we do when we wake up, during our time of wakefulness, and when we go to bed. It is important for us to make sure that whatever we do within our waking period and the time we go to bed does not, does not go out of par with what we are with our circadian rhythm. Now, due to the fact that we are trying to become robust human beings, let us look at the basic protocols of intermittent fasting. Number 1, no food at least 1 hour after waking up. So try to avoid any type of food upon waking up. But remember, this can be extended to 4 hours. So if you wake up at 6, you can fast for an extra 4 to get it to 10. Or if you wake up earlier, you can extend the fast. But based on research, upon waking up, at least an hour, because you've been fasting throughout the night, just extend it to an hour. That's the basic, bare minimum, 1 hour. Number 2, no food 2 to 3 hours prior to bedtime. So if your eating window is between 10 and 6, and you sleep at 9, make sure that by 6 you have your last meal. And then, because you're not really fasting after your last bite, your body is still processing the food, still digesting the food. So give it some time before you go to bed. Number 4, make sure that you respect your eating window. It is very important that you stick to that time, so that everything in the body can work appropriately. That is how the circadian rhythm works. That is how your internal clock works. At some point, I will make a video on the circadian rhythm and try to explain it properly. At the moment, I'm still learning about it. So you know me, I learn and share. So follow those basic protocols. Try to not have anything upon waking up for an hour or more. 2, make sure that you eat at least 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. Number 3, make sure that you get enough sleep. 4, respect the feeding window. Try to keep it the same all the time. Currently weekend keep to the same time. That will be vitally key. Make sure. Now let us look at some of the basic benefits of intermittent fasting based on science. Evidence-based. Number one, it promotes blood sugar control by reducing insulin resistance. That is something I spoke about earlier on, choosing the correct food. Number two, it can help decrease inflammation and promote a better health. That is what we want by saying we want to be robust human beings. It may improve brain function. And decline. So you are able to, your mindset, how your mind operates will be able to remain the same over time. So it's not just about losing weight, which is another benefit, but it's also about making sure that as we get older, our logic is still the same. The way we think, the way we see things, and our perspective is continually growing as we age, but not falling behind. Like I said, number four, it will aid with fat loss. Number five, increases growth hormone secretion, which is vital for growth, metabolism, weight loss, and muscle strength. So a lot of people get scared or they will lose their muscle, whereas this may be an aid in increasing muscle. I usually have about 60% of my protein intake earlier in the day. They've seen some good evidence around that. Science has proven that if you eat 60% of your protein earlier in the day, you'll be able to maintain and build more muscle. So that's something maybe you can start looking into. In closing, choose a window that works for you, a window that you can keep, a window that will help you move forward. Each and every one of us is different, so choose a window that will work for you so that you may be able